Welcome to Mentoring Moments. Mentoring Moments is a sub-series of the E-Commerce Edge podcast. It is composed of clips taken from Jason's one-to-one and group mentorship sessions. Hey everybody, so I'm on one of my one-to-one mentorship sessions with Megan, and she has a couple of really great items on her agenda for today that I thought would be helpful for a wider audience. We'll cover those today. And the first question you had is, what is that sweet spot, or what is that balance between having enough Shopify apps, having too many Shopify apps? What does it do to performance of the website? When should we start being worried? When should we start thinking about customization versus apps? Where is that sort of sweet spot land? And my general answer to that is it's very dependent on the app, what it does, and whether it has a front-end experiential component attached to it. And depending on how many pages or page types that app affects. So if you have an app, for example, that is a bundles app, now Shopify just recently released their native bundle functionality, but prior to that, people had to use apps for bundles. And almost every single project that I was involved in on Shopify used some form of a bundle app. And there's 20 bundle apps in the App Store as a result of that. And that would affect every single product page that had a bundle associated with it. And that, by definition, would automatically be slower than the pages without bundles attached to them. And we're talking about product pages here. It would also have an impact on loading the product cards, usually, depending on where the bundles are shown. It would generally have an impact on the collection page on the product card for bundle products as well, because it would show in some way the bundle that's available for that particular product type. But then we have some post-purchase apps, for example, post-purchase experience optimization apps, and really they only trigger when you're on the order success page. And then from there, it has to pull in real time certain data from the app to personalize the post-purchase follow-up flow. It has to pull a whole lot of content that it doesn't get from Shopify from the app instead. And some of those linkages, some of the upsell and cross-sell offers, it has to integrate back with Shopify if it needs to modify the order before the order is processed. So therefore, generally the way those apps work is that they modify the order status flow to where instead of it going straight through to, say, processing or order accepted, it would start like with order pending, and then it would finalize that. If no additional action was taken by the customer, then they would then move that order to like a processing state or whatever it might be before it then goes into the normal Shopify order management workflow. So there's a lot going on with some of these apps, and then other apps have almost no impact on the experience at all. And in some cases, you're better off to use front-end custom logic or theme logic to drive certain functionality. So I'll give you an example of that. So a lot of people want to put product labels on products for that have either specific tags or they've got specific meta fields associated with them. So it might be, and sometimes they want that logic to be automated. So if something's on special or on promotion, they want that to have a sale flag or a sale label on the product. And that would go on the product card everywhere on the website where there's a product card, including PDPs. And so sometimes they'll want to have a new label, right? And so they'll have a new tag applied to a product, and then it will show that new label on a product for a period of time, maybe for up to 60 days after a product is introduced to the catalog, for example. Sometimes some of those triggers would need to come from a PIM system or from an attribute that flows in from an external system and that gets removed by the external system. If you're using front-end logic, like custom front-end logic to do that, can be very fast because that then becomes part of the native Liquid theme, and all it's doing is triggering a function on the front end based on the tag or the meta field that is applied to that product. If you're using a third product labeling app, then every single time one of those product cards loads, it's got a reference. It's not a massive payload of data, but it still has to reference that third-party system and say, okay, when you apply this tag or this meta field, now let's go back to that third-party app. Let's find out what that third-party app wants us to load, and then it sends that payload back down to the front end and then loads that overlay over the top. Now, if you have too many apps that require referencing that third-party system to pull data down before it can fully render the page, then we can start getting massive page load time increases. Yeah, so I think it really does depend on what the app does, how front end heavy it is. Does it inject code into the Liquid theme only, or does it both inject code into the Liquid theme and require referencing that remote database that the app supplies? But yes, in general, any app will install at least some piece of JavaScript to achieve its functionality, particularly if it has a front end impact. What that means is that every time a page loads on the website, it's got to read that piece of JavaScript. It's got to see if it's relevant to that particular page. Then it's got to pull the data. Then it's got to render the data on the front end. As a general rule, apps will almost always have some kind of speed and performance penalty of some variety. How significant that is really depends on the functionality of the app.
Yeah, because we're at a point now where I think we've 27 apps in our store. We have a lot of apps, and I always try to keep an eye on how much we're actually using those apps or whether we can find an alternative. I think because we're a smaller company and we don't have an in-house developer, it's always been easy for us to just say, oh, we can find an app for that. But we're doing a lot of SEO work. We're driving much more traffic to our website than we ever have before. And we are growing as an e-commerce business. So I think for me, my concern is now we're getting to a point where I think we're slowing down our site, and there's apps that we've installed in the past that there's probably lots of code on there that needs removed. And yeah, I think it's trying to find that balance between, do we get a developer to code in some of this functionality so we can remove that app? Or yeah, it's a challenge, I think, for us as we're going through this transitional phase from a small business to as we're growing.
Yeah, and look, that's where an agency starts to become a really powerful ally, because they get to know your code base inside and out. They get to know how many apps you've got installed, what apps those do. They understand when they remove an app on your behalf, they now need to go and remove any additional code that is lingering around and hanging around in the theme. They will be able to consolidate JavaScript libraries, because a lot of times these apps use the same JavaScript library, but they install them every single time a new app is installed. They install the same JavaScript library multiple times on the website. So it actually has to call that same JavaScript library multiple times, whereas they can consolidate those JavaScript libraries, see where there's overlap, clean up the overall code base of the site to make sure it is running as efficiently as it possibly can. They'll do routine code audits to make sure that there's not a whole lot of cruft hanging around that shouldn't be there. I think that it probably won't be too far away until you'll need to have a proper agency partner that you work with on an ongoing basis. That sure, you could hire a freelancer to do a one-time code audit, maybe remove any of the cruft, maybe see where there's some consolidation that could be done. But you really need a long-term partner that understands the full structure of your website. You have a long-term partnership with that agency so that when you want to achieve new things, they'll be able to advise you and say, we think an app is the best way to go. We think maybe some front-end custom logic is the way to go. Maybe we think a custom private app that we will build for you is the way to go. And then that data that would service that could live either within Shopify as some backend files, or could live in AWS and pull it only for you. So because the reality is that all these apps, they have one set of infrastructure, right? And at any given point in time, they could be getting hit with more traffic, depending on how many sites that app is installed on, depending on how many times that's being triggered on those sites, depending on what the volume of traffic that those sites are seeing. And obviously they have to deal with the spikes and the troughs and try to keep their costs down internally. And some app vendors are very good at doing that and sort of auto scaling as required, and other app vendors are not. So that plays a part also in which apps may or may not slow down your site. It depends on the infrastructure of the app vendor and their ability to scale as well. And so the more things I think that you can move into natively hosted Shopify site logic, the better off you will be, right? But it doesn't always make sense to go away and code a custom app or some custom front-end logic if it's a pretty complex piece of work and it's an app that you could pay $20 a month for, 20 pounds a month for. Why would I go and spend 20 grand coding up, just for example, why would I spend 20 grand going and coding up something when I can spend $20 a month on an app? So They're really, and that's where an agency partner will be able to strategically inform those decisions alongside you. And so, look, I'm not promoting any one agency or saying one agency is better than another at doing this, but any of your Shopify Plus certified agencies, for example, there's a lot of variability in your standard Shopify agencies, all the way from pretty bloody average 1-2 man, woman band type of scenarios, all the way up to some very good non-Shopify Plus agencies. But once you get into the Shopify Plus certified agency space, almost all of them, I wouldn't say all, but I would say a significant portion of them, because they've gone through a much higher level of training and certification through Shopify, you can almost always guarantee that they can handle these types of decisions and help you make the right decision in a given scenario. And there may be something, for example, you might like the way a certain app functions, but you may want it to do a little bit more than what it does, or work a specific way for you. And sometimes that means they can configure that app or customize the front end experience that app delivers just with some front end code. Or they may say, hey, look, let's write an app that's very similar to this, but it works in exactly the way you want it to work. Plus, it will have a much less of an impact in terms of site performance. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, it definitely does make sense. And also from your perspective, so us being a smaller brand, and we've quite a small SKU set, we're not a fashion brand with hundreds and hundreds of SKUs. We don't do a huge amount currently of development on our site on a monthly basis. We kind of work in sprints, and we have quite a lot of different development that we need to do. So for a smaller brand like us, how would we navigate that with an agency?
Yeah, that's tough. It's always tough. However, what I would say is that once a brand starts to get on a retainer model with an agency, so let's say you start out, and most agencies will have a 10-hour minimum retainer, right? And they'll say, look, you want to go on a retainer with us, you want to have a sequestered resource that is protected. We can guarantee that we can deliver at least 10 hours a month worth of work for you each month, in and out, all throughout the year. Or we say, okay, we don't want to deploy anything in November and December because that's the high season. We don't want to deploy anything. But what we can do is, behind the scenes for those 10 hours a month, is we could be queuing up a whole bunch of work in staging where we've tested it all out. We've created a whole new piece of functionality or a suite of functionality. Let's not deploy that until January, but we're going to continue to build in the background, deploy and test that to a staging site, so that when the next open window comes around for deployment, we can deploy all this stuff that we've been working on. And I think that in my experience running agencies, brands that have a retainer always find a way to use that retainer. Mm-hmm. There's always stuff that they want to do that they, in a non-retainerized world, they put it off until it becomes acute, and then they want to do larger pieces of work. There's more chances of that breaking something on the site, because we're not doing these tiny discrete pieces of work in a rolling fashion. We're doing much more big bang pieces of work. And so therefore, there's greater chances of conflicts with other apps, especially when you get up to the 20 to 30 app installed scenario. There now sometimes becomes unpredictable interactions, both between apps and between the theme code, that all of a sudden we have to now do a ton more testing on. We have to do a ton more regression testing on. And it all of a sudden now becomes super painful to deploy anything new, because we've got this kind of technical debt hanging around the background that we know nothing about. We don't really know what those risks look like. So that's the other benefit of a retainer, is we can now bring much more momentum to what we're doing, and we can do it faster and we can do it cleaner, because if kind of everything's working in its current state and we're only just rolling out little pieces of functionality at a time, then that there's much less chance of that having some kind of odd interaction we can't predict. So I always recommend that when a brand, basically the moment that a brand can really start affording that, maybe because on retainer, you usually get a better rate than you would ad hoc, or even you will usually even get a better rate than project rates. You'll get, so let's say that their ad hoc rate is $200 an hour. Let's say that their project rate is $180 an hour. Usually their retainer rate might be $150 an hour, up to say 20 hours. 20 hours to 50 hours might be, I don't know, 110, and then 200 hours and above might be $100 an hour, something like that. There's always a discount for having that long-term partnership-minded engagement with an agency, because in projects, they can lose their ass, right? No matter how good you are at scoping a project, there's always unknowns there that can chew up your profitability really quick. And so I would say that it's about 50-50. making profit on build projects, initial build projects with clients as an agency. Whereas with a retainer, you are guaranteed to make money because you are charging an hourly rate for every single hour that you deliver, no matter what. And so all agencies, their holy grail for them is getting a client onto a retainer. That is a cash cow, so to speak, that is predictable. They can resource against it super efficiently, and they can be guaranteed to be profitable on every hour they deliver. And depending on the piece of work, they can also assign more junior developers to the simpler pieces of work, and they can assign their senior developers only to the really complex pieces of work. So it means that they can be a lot more efficient and profitable with each hour that they deliver, depending on the complexity of the work that they're delivering. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of the logic in behind why agencies act the way that they do. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, agency life is friggin' hard. It is hard to be profitable as an agency. It is anything to do with client services, even consulting, is always hard because you're dealing with so many different personalities. You're dealing with so many different organizational structures. Everybody has different expectations, and agencies don't always get it 100% right either. And so they've got to occasionally do rework when they stuff up, and they don't want that to be on the client's back. So they've got to eat that time. So agency life is tough, but you get access to, as opposed to dealing with just one freelancer who has a limited set of capabilities and experiences. When you work with an agency, the benefit is, especially if they're a mid-size agency, let's say they've got between 30 and 40 developers in-house, you will, almost anything that you want to do, one of those devs will have seen before. They will have done it before. They will have built it before. They will have worked with an app around it before. They will have custom coded it before. So that's the benefit of working with an agency, is you get a whole range of skills and abilities within that agency that can be applied to your account at different points in time as required. And you'll never get that with a 1 or 2 man, woman band or freelancer scenario. You just won't get it. And there's a much greater likelihood that a freelancer will need to learn on your dime than an agency. Agencies will always be learning, but they will have seen so much more than the freelancer that you basically benefit from their efficiency and knowing what they're doing at scale.
Yeah, and I also think what you said about you will always find a way to use your retainer, it's completely right, because I think for me personally, not having that team of developers around me, I probably hold off on some projects that I would really like to do because we don't have that personal retainer, and I have to put it forward. Okay, we want to get a retainer or we want to get a developer on board to do X, Y, Z, and really position that with those higher ups. Yeah, no, that's right.
And it takes each freelancer that you engage, it takes them time to get up to speed on even if it's only a couple of hours, to review your code base, to see how it's structured, to see how your sections are laid out, and then to have some kind of understanding of all the apps that you've got installed and what they're doing and what the code is doing under the bonnet. That might take 1 or 2 hours for a good developer to figure out in the first instance. If you don't want them to just look at this one tiny piece of functionality in isolation, they really need to understand the broader impacts of any new development that it might have on your website. And I just think that not having to relearn that with every new piece of work brings also speed and efficiency to you. And then where a freelancer might say, okay, this piece of work, I think it's going to take 20 hours. Your agency might be able to say, we think this is going to take 15 hours because we're not relearning everything every single time. We already know all the things that we need to plan in advance for this new piece of development, and we can give you the recommendation about the most efficient way to deliver this piece of work, right? So I just think there is such massive benefits to having an agency partner the moment for it. Now, I don't suggest like a brand new startup that has no revenue. They don't need a partner agency. They can work with freelancers to help them get their basic site initially set up, make any basic theme tweaks that need to be made. They can maybe even help them load their products in and get the categorization all set up properly, get the multivariant product set up properly, et cetera, get them a good foundation to get them up and running and off on the right foot. But then a lot of those brands, they don't really need to make too many changes until they're getting enough sales coming through that they're actually starting to get customer feedback on the experience anyway. And yeah, I don't suggest it for startups, but definitely as soon as possible, as soon as you can afford, say, a minimum of 10 hours a month with an agency and finding an agency that will do that minimum of 10 hours a month for you, because some agencies won't. Some agencies say, hey, we only work on retainers of 50 hours a month or more. Especially the bigger Shopify Plus agencies, they don't deal with rats and mice clients. They deal with the enterprise clients and above, and that's it. But you will find small to mid-market agencies that are very happy to have 10-hour retainers per month, because that gives them a guaranteed 100 hours. Maybe they won't be able to deliver that quite as efficiently as delivering 100 hours for one client, but they're in a growth phase too. And so they have to accept that they will not be getting 100-hour a month clients until they're a mid-market agency. And so they've got to prove their worth first. And so that's just a pain of growth of an agency. And if you can find an agency that can grow alongside you, so you can find an agency that is still small enough that a 10-hour retainer is pretty significant to them, because that might be an extra $1,500, $2,000, $3,000 a month, whatever it ends up being. As they grow, you grow. And that could be a really nice relationship to build over time, because they remember you as a foundational client for their business, and they appreciate and they respect that, and they don't want you to churn. So they look after you really well.
And you mentioned Shopify Plus. So Shopify Plus has come up in internal discussions. And I know that it offers a lot more capability. At what point do you think that brands should consider moving towards Shopify Plus? Because it is a big jump in cost, but at what point would you think that brands need to move towards that plan?
I personally don't think that most brands need to move to Shopify Plus until Shopify forces you to. So I can't remember exactly what the cutoff point is, but I think from memory, and this is going back a few years now, I think it's at maybe $1 million or above, or maybe it's $2 million or above GMV per year through the platform. Then they force you at some point. I can't remember exactly what that number is, but at some point they basically force you on Shopify Plus if you want to remain on Shopify. For most brands, they can absolutely get away with lower tiers of Shopify, because apart from Flow and apart from some of the other things that you get on Shopify Plus, most brands that are sub that revenue level can't really make full use of Shopify Plus anyway. You're not really using the additional bandwidth that's allocated to you. You're not really fully leveraging those 1, 2, or 3 additional. This is not a tremendous amount of additional functionality they give you. They pretend that they do, but really it's not as differentiated as they like to pretend that it is. Except now with some of the B2B functionality, they're starting to make most of their new B2B functionality Shopify Plus only. And so for brands that want to leverage native Shopify for B2B, they'd have to be on Plus, or use a B2B app like a Sparklayer or Wholesale Gorilla or something like that. So that might be worth considering if you're a fast growing B2B brand, then maybe it's worth it. But I just don't think, for most brands, and Shopify would hate me saying this, I just don't think they differentiate between regular Shopify and Shopify Plus. I don't think there's enough differentiation between them to be significantly relevant for smaller businesses.
That definitely makes sense, and it's quite a relief that you say that too, because it is pricey.
It is expensive. You're looking at around $2,000 USD a month minimum for Shopify Plus, and then it goes up, from there. And then when you tack on maybe the extra $200 or $300 a month you're spending on apps, maybe $500 a month you're spending on apps, most Shopify Plus merchants, when we combine their Shopify Plus subscription plus minimum 20 apps, like I architect virtually 0 Shopify Plus projects that don't use at least 20 apps, plus a whole lot of customization on top. But you're looking at $2,500 a month realistically for most of those projects, just in subscription fees.
Yeah, no, we're definitely a long way from that. But no, it's good to hear that perspective, because we've experienced a couple of things recently on apps where it was on rebuy. You could only use certain features if you were on Shopify Plus, it was checkout recommendations. So that's where the discussion came up. At what point do we consider Shopify Plus? But if we can go without it and we can use developers instead, that is good with me.
Yeah, look, I think the vast majority of smaller brands would do far better, reinvest that $2,500 a month into a retainer plan with a long-term partner. They would see much more value out of that until they get to that between, say, $2 and $5 million a year in GMV. Then I think at some point it really does start to make sense, because of the enhanced level of customization your agency can do for you on Shopify Plus, and just some of the things that they can do from a front-end logic perspective, and parts of the platform they can access that they can't access on normal Shopify. There's some additional functionality that when you get to that scale starts to make a lot more sense. But when in your case, you've got a few things working against you going to Shopify Plus. First of all, you don't have a massive catalog. 2, you're not doing a massive amount of transactions. 3, your goal is to get most of your customers onto a subscription to where they're not actually going to be hitting the site every single time they want to make a purchase. The purchase is going to be automatically generated inside the platform, as opposed to them navigating the site, browsing the site, adding products to their cart, That's not going to be happening. A lot of those rebuys are going to be happening in an automated way, or at least that's the goal. So I think that in your specific business use case in particular, Shopify Plus just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, no, that's good to know.
Cool. Look, if we look at the next thing that you talked about there, which is look, for the past few years, we've been seeing a significant year-on-year growth rate, anywhere from sort of 20 to 40% type of growth rate year over year. What are tips for sustaining this growth? As I've mentioned, I think a lot of times on the podcast, etc. Look, I'm not a digital marketer. I don't offer digital marketing services, but what I think overlooked more often than not by brands is the impact of logistics, customer service, pre and post purchase experience stuff. I think that is too overlooked in terms of the impact on the stickiness of customers. So I see brands focusing on performance marketing. I see brands focusing on content marketing. I see them focusing on influencer partnerships. I see them focusing on SEO, SEM, and all sorts of other digital marketing tactics. I see them focusing on those much, much more than I see them focusing on the both pre and post purchase and on-site experience, in terms of making sure that on-site experience is just so good, so seamless, so frictionless, enjoyable, fun, engaging. And I don't think brands just simply focus enough on even the logistics experience. Like when I had my e-commerce pure play, one of the things we did is we would take orders up until 6 p.m. at night, and those orders would still go out the same day. And being in little old New Zealand, unless you were rural, your item would be received the next day. And so you have no idea the impact that someone placing an order at 6 p.m. at night, us getting it out the door, and it arriving on their desk in their office at 9 a.m. the next morning. They were like, oh my God, how the hell did you make this happen? Like, do you have your own delivery vans that are like driving around the country? Do you have carrier pigeons? How are you doing this? And we would get emails and phone calls every single day saying, thank you, I needed this memory card for a shoot at the weekend. You got it to me by Friday. I had a backup plan that I could run down to my local camera shop if I needed to, but now I don't need to because you got it to me overnight. Thank you, you guys are amazing. We just got so many wow moments through that one single experiential difference that we had versus our competitors, where every single one of our competitors was 2 to 4 day delivery nationwide, because oftentimes they were either drop shipping and they had to get the order into the supplier's hands and then to the customer, or they would simply aggregate orders over, say, a 2-day period or whatever, and then they would ship them all out at once, and that would lead to a 3 or 4 day turnaround time. So in comparison to that, we look like gods, right? And I think it's all those teeny tiny little differentiators that help to make customers more sticky than the best marketing in the world doesn't make up for the marketing that experience is for you. Because logistics is marketing, customer service is marketing, site experience is marketing. Whether I get errors when I try to check out, that's marketing. Every single function you do that has a customer impact, that is marketing. And it's either great marketing or it's shitty marketing. And it's marketing you positively or negatively, whether you like it or not. And I know you know this because this is your bag. So I'm not trying to speak in a condescending way. I know a lot of this stuff, but I'm saying this probably more for the benefit of a lot of other brands out there that maybe they look at the pure digital marketing function as the marketing, but they don't realize the impact on marketing of tech and ops. And tech and ops are just as important to your marketing efforts as the traditional concept of, hey, we're running performance marketing or we're doing these other outreach campaigns or whatever. Even to the point, and we've talked about this before, customer service, when they have a bit of downtime, ringing up their best customers and saying, thank you very much, we really appreciate your business. How can we do things better? We've got these 2 or 3 products in the pipeline. Do you think these would be something that you would consider buying if we produce these and we put these to market? They can almost do real-time polling with some of your best customers and some of your worst customers and say, we've seen that you bought from us before, but you haven't bought in 6 months or a year. Was it something we did? Was it that the product was no longer suitable for you? Could we produce a better product? Could we create a better service? I think engaging in a really personal way while you're still small, in particular, has outsized benefits on customer stickiness. It has outsized benefits on name recognition and retention of customers. And so I think for me, like, you can run the best social campaign in the world. You can have the best Google Ads campaigns in the world that drive traffic, and maybe you even have a half decent conversion rate. But I just think that there are so many levers that brands can pull that they do not think about when it comes to marketing. And I think that's a massive missed opportunity, because I know it's a missed opportunity for the brands that I buy off of, because I've never been called ever. Unless something goes wrong with an order, I've never had a phone call from a brand. Even if I've bought from them 50 times, I've never had a phone call from a brand, even when I'm a loyal customer. The only time I may have a contact from them is once I've left and I haven't bought in 6 months. And then they try to send me a STEM campaign email. And I'm like, did I not matter to you when I had ordered 50 times in a row? Did I only matter to you when I hadn't bought off you for 6 months? It's a totally fucked way of looking at customer experience when you are trying to be the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff instead of trying to be proactive.
I completely agree. And I think marketers were always chasing that shiny new thing to go after, or that shiny new metric or whatever. It is very easy to forget about those fundamentals that make up part of the journey. And I think as well, at least internally for us as a team, something that we're trying to improve is not working in silos and trying to be more collaborative with other parts of the business. And it's something that maybe marketing teams don't do very often, is have chats with customer service. And how would you recommend that those teams collaborate more and better together?
What I've seen work really well is literally a minimum of a 1 weekly operational team meeting with marketing, e-com, sales, whatever those teams look like. So I would have routine meetings with both customer service and ops. So ops for us, when I was working at HealthPost, was mostly logistics, because we had our own internal warehouse. We had our own pick, pack, dispatch teams. We did all of our own receipting of products, our own ordering of products. We did kind of everything to do with logistics. We did all that stuff in-house. And so a lot of that would come down to, okay, cool, Courier Post is having a challenge this week getting into this region because there was a mudslide or whatever the case may be. And so understanding all of the little nuanced impacts on customer experience, and then being able to proactively have the marketing team. So I would have meetings with marketing, because we had a 12-person marketing team. There was me, which was the e-com manager, and I was the Lone Ranger I was like a one-man e-com team. And then we had logistics and ops, and then we had customer service. And customer service, I think, had 20 people in it. And so we would routinely have our four departments would have regular, if not weekly, then a minimum of 2 weekly meetings to talk about what's going on in our respective departments. How can we help each other? How can we make things better? How can we have handoffs between issues that are discovered by customer service, handed off to me to resolve as a website issue? It was made much easier once we implemented NetSuite, ERP, and CRM, because they could instantly hand off tickets that were functional issue tickets. They could move those to be assigned to me from customer service if it was something they couldn't resolve and it needed to be solved technically or functionally. And then they could also jointly assign me and marketing to that ticket if they felt like it was an issue around messaging, or it was an issue around, okay, we're marketing something that actually isn't in stock or something like that. We could be jointly managing issues and tickets inside NetSuite CRM, and that made us significantly more efficient, because things could be handed off quicker and easier without having to manually send an email to somebody else in the team and say, because pre-NetSuite, we were like pinging emails around to each other. Oh, this is happening. Oh, this is happening. Oh my God, this is happening. Please look after this. And it was just so inefficient, because then I'd have to email them. I'd have to keep that email, even if I'd actioned it, I'd have to keep that email as unread in my inbox until it was fully resolved, then respond to them and say, okay, this issue's been resolved. Feel free to test. And it was just a nightmare in terms of issue handling. Once we had a CRM, all that pain went away. And obviously, if you've got something like even as simple as Gorgeous, where you can ping tickets around and assign them to different team members to be resolved, even something as lightweight as Gorgeous will make, and I know you guys run Gorgeous, but I just think that a combination of frequent meetings with each other so that you can build empathy for what they're going through, they can build empathy for you, and you can figure out ways to help make each other better at your respective jobs and to help them help you. So for example, I know this sounds very Jerry Maguire, but especially with customer service, if they can be doing outreach and looked at as basically SDRs that also do customer service, like if they could change their mindset around that, like that would make your job so much easier as a marketer, because you can't individually reach out to a ton of customers every week, but customer service can. And also customer service can cross-sell and upsell when people want to make a return. Customer service can basically make or break a deal when somebody makes an inquiry pre-purchase. And so you can spend a whole lot of time and money getting a customer to the website, getting them all hot and bothered about a product. And then if they've got one question before they convert and they don't have a fantastic experience with customer service, that's all that acquisition money down the drain, because they'll never convert and you'll never be able to retain them. And if something goes wrong on a given order, particularly if it's a subscription order, if you're not very proactive about that, customer will probably churn. And I just see teams working at cross purposes with each other because they are KPI'd so differently, right? So e-com is usually KPI'd very different than customer service. Customer service is KPI'd very differently than internal logistics. The internal logistics is how many orders processed in an hour, how many orders processed in a day, how many orders processed by each individual pick, pack, dispatcher. Those are the kind of KPIs. How much warehouse utilization do we have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so they're KPI'd so differently to customer service, which is how many tickets are resolved on first response, how many calls, emails, live chats can a customer service rep take in an hour or in a day or per shift? What are their performance metrics in terms of resolution times, resolution days, resolution contacts? They're KPI'd in such different ways, because remember, customer service is viewed as a cost center. They're not viewed as a profit center. They're viewed as a pure cost to the business. But I believe customer service should pay their own way. And I believe they absolutely have the ability to pay their own way if they're KPI'd and if they are incented properly. And so if every ticket that comes in that leads to a sale they're commissioned on, you watch how fast customer service starts to care about the customer experience beyond just fixing problems. Because remember, it's like cops, right? Cops have a very jaded view of the world. They think all the world is a bunch of assholes because they deal with the armpit of society 95% of the time. So they become jaded and they start to think that everybody is an asshole. Even if you can't see it, they're probably doing something shady behind the scenes, because that's all I ever see every single day. And so therefore the whole world's an asshole. Customer service in some respects gets that sense too, because they're nonstop dealing with problems. Oh, this didn't arrive. Oh, it got sent to the wrong address. Oh, the product was damaged and leaked all over inside the carton before it arrived. Oh, we got charged more on this subscription. We got charged more than what the current website price is. There could be 1,001 different issues that customer service are dealing with, and it's a grind. I know, because I've sat in customer service for several days, and it's depressing in a way. You got to have a special personality to work in customer service. But if they are empowered to go beyond, if they're empowered to really be the face of the brand, because you can't be the face of the brand all the time. Your automated marketing isn't really a face of the brand, but customer service can be. And I like the idea of turning customer service into a customer success team. I like that idea, because that's what SaaS platforms do. They have a customer success team, which is, yes, they will deal with issues. You've got a problem with the SaaS platform, but their main goal is to help you leverage that platform to the maximum for your business. They're all about, how can you use this new module within the platform? How can we configure this to make you more efficient? Or how can we configure this to where it can help you make more money? Or customer success is just a different mindset. The customer service sets the expectation that we will only ever be the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff for our customers. And we don't ever want to just be that. We want to be customer love and customer joy. We want to be customer experience people. We want to be we want customers to have success with us and our products. And so I just think that, I know this sounds like I'm on my pulpit about this, but I just see it so often with brands that they pour, in some cases, millions of dollars a year into digital marketing, traditional marketing, letterbox drops, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But they overlook some of the most basic fundamental things in their own business as it touches the customer.
For sure. And we're always trying to acquire the next new customer rather than focusing on the loyal customers that we already have. So I think customer service really is a great way to do that. Yeah. Some changes coming for us internally, I think, after this discussion.
Yeah, look, it's exciting. And I love, and usually your existing customer service team will love the reorientation of their positioning within the business. And they will love the opportunity to because oftentimes customer service is at the bottom of the totem pole in a lot of businesses, and they're not appreciated. They're almost like the kid in the basement. We know they're there, but we don't really know what they do, and we really don't feel their pain, and we really are not that empathetic to them, because we're like, they're not driving revenue anyways. This is a necessity in our business. It's not a want to have. It's a must have in our business. It's a necessary evil is how a lot of businesses view customer service. And that's why I'm so passionate about helping those people working in a very tough job to love their job more, to be incentivized properly, and for the brand to ultimately win because those people are super motivated to help customers to have a joyous experience interacting with us.
That's really good. I know our customer service team would love to hear what you're saying.
I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of customer service teams because I just bloody have empathy for, man, the shit they deal with on a daily basis is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. And the variety of issues they have to deal with is just nuts. And their organizational skills have to be top notch too, because oftentimes they're juggling 5-10 cases at a time and it's like a chessboard, and they're trying to move each one of these forward a little bit further every day, all the way to resolution. And if anything drops through the cracks, they're the ones that get blamed. So it's a hard life. It's a hard life, and they're usually not paid that either. So yeah, it's a tough one. It's a really tough one. So yeah, I'll always be an advocate of customer service teams for that reason.
Yeah, and then, our per customer service teams, they have the B2B side and the B2C side. The same team handles both sides. They're constantly context switching between our salons and then our retail customers. So yeah, they have their work cut out for them.
And another thing that I've seen work really well is to segment customer service. So having rules in the system to where ticket assignments are based on, are they B2B? Are they B2C customers? So that they can each specialize. Now, maybe if you're still small, then maybe it's hard to do that because the rate of specific types of queries aren't consistent enough for us to do that segmentation. But even being able to segment from high value customers to low value customers to where your best people in terms of performance get assigned the tasks that relate to your repeat customers over a certain, say, GMV annual value or something like that. I've seen that work really well, where the newbies to the business and the newbies to the customer service team, as they're learning the ropes and as they're getting up to speed, you don't necessarily want them talking to your best customers. You want them talking to the first-time customers, the pre-order customers, the ones that are on your site and they're asking a question via live chat, but they've never bought with you before and they're thinking about buying from you. Now, I'm not saying that first experience with your brand isn't important. I'm just saying that they're an unknown quantity in the beginning. They're an unknown quantity of customer. But if you have a customer that's spending, I don't know, $2 or $3 grand with you a year in, year out, you want to give them a premium service. So either you segment the people that are responding to those issues, or you at least segment the priority level that those people are given in your ticketing system. So in Gorgeous, you can segment that. You can say, look, okay, they automatically get escalated into a VIP bucket if they have, in the last 12 months, if they've spent more than $5 grand. And you can look at your average spends across customers and you can say, okay, this is what distinguishes a VIP customer. Man, they're going to get priority and we are going to resolve their problems first every single time. So I think you've got to distinguish those customers somehow at every touch point as they engage with your business. And if that tag, that VIP tag, which can be dynamically assigned to certain customer groups, if that follows them throughout the customer journey, so they always get the highest level of service, they always get the highest priority, they will always be notified first. They would be notified first if we get hit by a hurricane or something like that and logistics falls over, they always get notified first. So I just think there's lots of ways we can segment our customer base to give them that, and they won't know behind the scenes, they won't know why they're getting this higher level of service, and they don't need to know. And the other customers don't need to know that they're getting a slightly lower level of service. And I tell you, the VIPs on the receiving end will feel it. Even if they don't know that they're getting a special level of service because they're a VIP customer, they will feel like they're getting the VIP treatment. And that makes customers more sticky too.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful actually, even from the updates perspective, because in Gorgeous, we do use that VIP tag. And then in terms of email marketing, we have VIP. But in terms of those sort of updates in between, it's not something we've ever done before, segmenting it if we've run out of stock or whatever, all those in between updates, that's really helpful. Yeah.
Oh, I'm always here to challenge the status quo. You know that, Megan. And I know that's so frustrating, but that's what I'm here to do.
No, it's good. It's good. You always get food for thought.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. And I can't wait to catch up with you again in another couple of weeks. If you'd like to get mentored by Jason for free, head over to greenwoodconsulting.net, scroll to the bottom of the page, and click Get Mentored by Jason.